Hey guys, welcome to Geek Devotions, the show put on by a couple of devoted geeks devoted to letting you know that you are loved. This is May Movie Madness, and I'm Celeste.
And I'm Dallas. And do us a favor, guys, make sure you follow all of our social medias on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But also, most new thing for us is our podcast, Comm Talk. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio, all these other platforms. Guys, check us out, follow us, and do us a favor while you're on those respective websites. Leave a review. Let people know what you think of our podcast and share it out. Really cool thing. I'm actually going to be on another person's podcast next week, Nerd in the Verse. Again, links will be in the description and cards somewhere. Really excited about that. It's going to be an awesome conversation. You guys need to check it out.
We wanted to announce to you that at the end of this month, we are having our very good friend Paul Turner come and guest host Geek Devotions. Paul is a pretty cool guy. He has a YouTube channel. There will be links below. I think his name is awesome because it's Jedi for Hire. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I was actually talking to him today, and he's got a really cool idea for a Geek Devotion. So, guys, look out for it, especially you gamers, you tabletop gamers. You're going to love his devotion.
I'm intrigued.
Right? So, hey, guys, like we said, this is May Movie Madness, and this is the month where our friends from the Ministry Training Center have taken on the project of doing Geek Devotions all month long. And so today's episode, actually, I'm pretty excited about it and pretty proud because my sister, Damara, is actually doing the Geek Devotion. But make sure you stay tuned to the end of the episode because our friend David Pierce, also part of Ministry Training Center, has our question of the week and wants you guys to leave really good answers down below for him. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry Training Center.
Hey geeks, I'm Damara. I am Dallas and Celeste's sister, as they probably already introduced me, but hey, I wanted to say hi myself anyways. Okay, so today on Geek Devotions, we're talking about Paul and Thor. I know, they don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense together, but, you know, bear with me. It works out in the end, I promise. Okay, so here's the thing about Paul and Thor. Yes, they're hard to compare, but they compare a little bit easier than you might think. You see, Paul and Thor, they had a little bit of a pride issue, and they could be a little stubborn. But we'll get into that. For starters, let's actually start with Paul. For the purpose of this devotion, I'm just going to keep calling him Paul. I'm not going to go between his old name because it gets confusing after a while, and it just happens. Paul, as we know, he's kind of a famous person in the Bible. And so the thing with him is, in the beginning, he wasn't so great. He made some mistakes, and he made some really stupid mistakes at that, okay? So when Paul started, he grew up spending his whole life being taught the scriptures. He knew them frontwards and backwards and was incredibly smart. And he could probably teach just about anyone. But the thing with Paul is, yes, he became the Pharisee that we all know and dread. But a Pharisee was actually basically like a scribe and a priest. They knew their stuff. They knew the scripture, and they were Jewish. The same thing as Jesus, okay? So what would possibly make Paul go to the extremes that he did before he's met Jesus on the road to Damascus? Well, a little bit of pride and taking things really too far. So in Acts 8, we come to the point where Paul, he's doing his thing. He's going off, he's pulling Christians out, and he's kind of taking them down, okay? Like, we're talking imprisonment, beating, so forth, okay? And he does this in Acts 8, specifically when they're actually mourning the loss of a disciple. Talk about pretty low, all right? But he does, like I said, he makes mistakes, and he made a pretty big one at this point in time. Paul's mistake wasn't just being pride and being stubborn all the time. The reality is, he was pretty lost in his own faith. He was attacking people that were Jews. It wasn't just a Christian church. It was made up of basically what we would call today as a Messianic Jew. That's what this church was made up of. So these people were his own blood that he was attacking. So he was pretty lost at this point. So keep in mind, Jewish, knew his stuff. He wasn't a terrorist. He was basically the same as they were, but he completely was lost. So let's kind of backtrack and let's look at Thor. Thor grows up his entire life knowing that he's going to become king one day of the 9 realms. He literally was protecting the 9 realms since probably the day he could pick up a sword. Let's be honest. Him and the Warrior 3, they kind of had it going on. What happens? Well, in the movie, what happens is he gets a little bit of a big head. You see, the movie starts out where he's about to be crowned king, and in this lovely crowning ceremony, the Frost Giants invade. And it's not the entire people, though. It's maybe 2 or 3 Frost Giants, and they're trying to steal a relic that belongs to them. Okay, well, Thor's retaliation is, let's just go start a war and end this now and put them back in their place. But what he doesn't realize is he completely ignores the words of his father's wisdom. And his father is trying to prevent him from starting a war that would cost the lives of hundreds. Losing lives should have been a pretty big indicator that he'd probably stop. Same thing with Paul. Paul probably should have had something click there. You know, we're ending people's lives, we should probably think. He didn't do that, though. What happens with Thor? He gets cast to Midgard. He literally gets told, no, you're stripped of your power, you're disowned, go. And sends him to Midgard. But just like our Father God, Thor's father had a plan. He gave him a way to redemption. He sent the very object, the object of power for Thor, and he sends it to Midgard with him. So in the event that he humbled himself and got past his pride and stubbornness, he could actually reclaim his birthright. Let's try this. Let's look back at Paul. Paul, how does he find his redemption? Well, he finds it on the road to Damascus. On the road to Damascus, he meets Jesus. Now, Jesus has already died and rose again by this point. So, to be standing in front of this man that he doesn't believe to be the Messiah, that he knows is supposed to be dead, and he's standing in front of you, talk about a pretty serious wake-up call. So, Paul basically gets scales upon his eyes, and then he kind of has to trust the very people that he was sentencing to death. And he does. He has a very harsh reality check, much like Thor has. And he's forced to face reality. But when the scales come off his eyes, he doesn't dwell on it. In fact, he immediately goes and he starts preaching in churches. But because we all have to reap what we sow, the response was not quite as great. The response actually ended up being that they wanted to kill him. So, what happens? Well, Paul has to trust the very disciples that he was trying to kill, and they lower him down in a basket. Talk about kind of humiliating, right? But he survived, and he would later become one of the apostles that we also know wrote the 13 letters which make up most of our New Testament today. So he is known throughout all time and history as a great man of God. But this great man of God still made mistakes, and his pride and stubbornness were what got him in trouble. So let's go back to Thor. Thor does get his power back. We know him because he's a hero, and there's several other movies that he's in, and he's still helping to save the day. He still had to face reality. He had to humble himself. And in the end of the film, he's willing to sacrifice himself without any power to his name. He's still willing to do it because he finds out what is right and what is wrong. And he even saves the very beings that he was trying to kill at the beginning of the movie. He saves the Frost Giants, an entire group of people. Planet, really. Okay. So we've talked about Thor, and we've talked about Paul, and we've talked about the fact that they both have this pride and the stubbornness going on, and they both had to be humbled, and they both had to face reality, and both of them had to come to terms with the fact that literally lots of lives were lost because of their stubbornness. You can't tell me there was no heartbreak there, because there was. Both of them had to face the heartbreak of everything that they thought was right wasn't right necessarily, at least not entirely. And then, of course, they had to face the reality that they had to start back from the ground up. And they had to face the facts of what they had done. I mean, they killed people. Let's go from a different perspective. I'm actually a counselor. I know I probably don't necessarily look like one, but that's okay. Technically, my license is a PLPC. Got a few more hours left to go. But I got it. So here's the thing. In my profession, I can't tell you how many times someone has sat there in front of me, told me their problems, But the biggest thing about starting to heal is you actually have to admit when you're wrong. You have to admit it. The minute you admit that you've played a part in it and you're willing to face it, your healing can start. But the second thing you really got to do is you got to give it up to the Lord. If you hold on to it for life, it's just going to keep coming back and haunting you. So that means that you have to give it to the Lord and leave it on His step and not come by every day or every week and pick it right back up and take it with you. You're supposed to give it to the Lord. It's not that kind of thing you're supposed to be picked back up again.
Mary, we want to thank you for that wonderful lesson. But I got to ask you, the question of the week this week is, you know, you look at Thor, you look at Paul, both of them are very enthusiastic people. So, but their enthusiasm was driven by their pride. So my question to you is your enthusiasm being driven by your pride, your flesh, or is your enthusiasm being driven by the Spirit of God? Because God has a way of humbling us. He has a way of getting our attention. So I ask you to take a moment and look at yourself and see what's driving you. What's the motivating factor in your life? And if it needs to be changed or corrected, I would encourage you to do that today. So we would ask you to like, share, and subscribe to our videos here on our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this episode of Geeks Devotions. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Geek out.